And we'll move to Silvia Paz, the chair of the Lithium Valley Commission. Welcome.
Thank you. Is the microphone? Yeah, it's on. Thank you, Senator Padilla. Thank you, members of the committee, for having me here. My name is Silvia Paz, and I will be talking first, a brief introduction about myself, my organization, how I ended up in the Lithium Valley Commission, background on the commission, recommendations in the report, and some reflections a couple of years after that report has been submitted. So again, my name is Silvia Paz. I was raised in the Coachella Valley in a community in very close proximity to the Salton Sea. Actually in a mobile home community. And I now lead an organization called Alianza Coachella Valley that is based in the Coachella Valley with a purpose of improving and creating real economic opportunities for the people, mostly farm working community that live surrounding the Salton Sea, and improving quality of life. So I was appointed by Governor Newsom to the Lithium Valley Commission, and I served as the chair. And obviously my perspective was to think about what we were hearing at the local level as this promise to not only transition into a green economy, but also to create jobs and to transform the lives of our residents, right? And with some of the numbers that Dr. McGivens mentioned and the potential there, it's really easy for us to be thinking about, well, this is going to transform our communities. And I think a lot of the conversations in the Lithium Valley Commission is yes, and only if we create the environment so that we can capture more than the extraction itself, but the supply chain, as Dr. McGivens was talking about. A little bit of background on the Lithium Valley Commission. We were established through legislative bill AB 1657 by Assemblymember Garcia, which created the Lithium Valley Commission under the California Energy Commission, composed of 14 members, all appointed, and we were tasked to analyze, review, and provide a set of recommendations on 8 topics. The topics ranged on a variety of understanding more how we advance lithium recovery and the co-benefits with geothermal extraction. What does that mean for grid stability? And understanding the environmental methods for extraction, what is the difference between lithium extraction versus lithium mining and its environmental effects, as well as any recommendations for legislative or regulatory changes that would be needed in order to encourage a new lithium extraction industry out of the geothermal plants. So with that, we met about 26 times over the duration of the commission, engaged experts like Dr. McGivens, people from the industry to understand more the context of lithium extraction, as well as community engagement, so hearing from community members and our tribal neighbors. The report was submitted December 1st, 2022. With a total of 15 recommendations. And again, thinking back, when I look at these recommendations just on themselves, they don't capture really the entire essence of the conversations. So it is, again, very important to ground us in the context. And I think these committee hearings help us do that. But to go into the recommendations, I broke them down into some simple categories. Some are, what are the needs of the industry? And the industry expressed a need for a clear, streamlined permitting process, both for geothermal and for the direct lithium extraction process. And again, thinking about capturing the entire supply chain, we think this streamlined permitting process also needs to apply to related manufacturing, related manufacturing efforts. The other recommendation was investments in R&D. So the technology is new. There have been investments from both the federal government and the state to test some of these methods that have been given to the industry, and the importance of continuing to invest in research and development, but again, not just in the extraction, but the battery manufacturing and recycling process. Another category was under environmental process. So we have learned that there is a difference between extraction and lithium mining. With direct lithium extraction being a closed-loop system, you can extract it directly from the brine that it's already coming out of the geothermal plants. So because it is a closed loop, it does have less environmental impacts, both in the footprint that we need in order to capture the lithium, but also in the use of water. Having said that, there was a lot of, during the time, unknowns, and we have a little more data now. So there is a report that Dr. McKibbins was involved with. It was funded through the Department of Energy, and it was recently published. But the report was looking not just at how much lithium is available in the known geothermal resource area in the Salton Sea, but also to better understand the impacts to air and water. When we're talking about air, it becomes very important because we are a rural community and the border already exposed to bad air quality. And adding anything to it, it's just doubling the impact or the cumulative effects. Some of the new learnings in the report, and I know Dr. McKibbins knows more on that, but my takeaway from the report was that there is some levels of ammonium and hydrogen sulfide that does come out in the process, and it's in the air. It is still within, it meets the standards for the state and federal, but one of the things that we do not have right now is a way to capture the baseline. So if we are looking at increasing lithium extraction and increasing the number of geothermal plants that are going to be there, it's very important that we have a way to capture a baseline so that then we can measure and continue to monitor along the way so that we can measure any impacts. With relation to water, again, it has been said that it's minimal compared to other extraction methods, and it's also a fraction of the water that is usually currently allowed for agriculture. And even that is positive, but there are still unknowns, and there's more need for understanding the cumulative use, again, as we're thinking about broadening and really extracting more lithium. And the other thing, putting it in the context of the Colorado River, if there is less water available, even though it is a fraction of what is currently used for agriculture, we need to be weighing down how this water is going to be prioritized, right? Is it going to be prioritized for this industry? Is it going to be prioritized for agriculture or for other related needs? Under environmental recommendations too, there was conversation around public health impact assessments. During the commission meetings, I mean, the state was moving their budget, and Imperial Valley did receive funding to look at environmental impacts. The northern end of the Salton Sea did not receive any funding, so we might end up with a place where we understand environmental impacts of only one side of the Salton Sea, not the other, unless there is an effort to fund the other side of the Salton Sea. There was also a recommendation on the topic of water to fund IID to do a water study, taking into effect, into consideration the cumulative use of future geothermal lithium extraction development. And so transitioning into another category, regional economic development and investments. There are several recommendations under this category. Recommendation 3 talked about economic zones. Again, if you live in that region, you would understand how Imperial Valley, Coachella Valley, Palo Verde Valley have so many things in common already, not just an agricultural base of workers and environmental concerns due to our environment. However, when it's come to being able to create either an economic plan that would address our situations, we are divided into the southern border region or the Inland Empire region. So the needs of the Salton Sea region are really diluted when we get separated like that. And we felt, again, that if we're talking about creating the environment for a future lithium industry, it was important that as a region we're investing in it so that we can become more competitive. There is a bill that Senator Padilla did co-author with Assemblymember Garcia, AB 2757, that is addressing that, and it moved out of committee last week, so we're very happy about that. Infrastructure was not necessarily a topic that we were tasked with exploring, but naturally, given our context, you couldn't have a conversation about a new industry without talking about infrastructure. We are rural communities. We lack infrastructure just for basic needs, people being able to get from their house to their jobs, to school, or to the doctor, and even more thinking about adding a whole new industry that would require new housing or other developments. Just the infrastructure is not there. And when we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about not just transmission lines, which are important directly for the transition into this clean energy future. So there is recommendation number 2 in the report to invest in new and upgrades for transmission lines in the Imperial Valley. But there are 2 other recommendations that just broadly talk about the need for resources in infrastructure overall, from roads to rail to, I mean, sometimes it's water, broadband, things of that nature that are important. And then the last one that I'll mention is capacity development in the region. So when we're talking about, again, workforce development, it became very important that if we're going to be capturing the benefits, that we need to focus on hiring local. And so then ensuring that we had a local workforce that was ready was important. So recommendation 11 does request for funding for STEM curriculums that would prepare people to enter the workforce in this industry. And more broadly, recommendation 13, just capacity development for our local tribes and EJ communities to be able to learn and engage and move along the process as these decisions are being made. So I will close now with a few reflections. I mentioned there was a lot more unknowns when we started. Now with the Dr. Benner's report and the Department of Energy report, we do understand a little bit more of the impacts, things that we need to continue to track. And I would encourage you to think of this report as, again, a place and time with what was known there, but this industry continues to change, the needs continue to change, and the advancements also might change where we need to pivot to in order to capture this. The other thing is that it will require multi-agency collaboration. It's essential, again, because we're not ideally not just talking about extraction, we're talking about really creating this environment that is going to allow us to to capture the full benefits. And we cannot do that unless we're addressing it from the various other aspects that were captured in the recommendations. So with that, thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Chair Paz, for your service and for that summary and reiteration of the myriad of complex recommendations there.
So referring back to the work that the Energy Commission has been doing and the leadership of Commissioner Gallardo, it is reassuring that we have the agencies talking to each other, and that's how in the hearing or proceeding you had last week, we're able to understand, okay, where under these recommendations is there an effort, right, to advance, who's working on it. I think that is the beginning. One of the challenges that I have seen, and it's probably just how government and systems are naturally created, and that's going to be our challenge, is that we think about our funding and mandates in a very siloed approach. And where we need to get at is to thinking, where are the opportunities for these sources of funding, because the state as a whole, the different agencies involved do have some resources. Where are the potentials for these resources to start supplementing each other versus saying, well, air resources is here and this is our mandate and we're going to do this, and they never talk to whatever transportation is doing and they use their funding. You know, so that level of how do we get through maybe some of the structural things around how agencies are using their funding and how they can leverage each other's funding, I don't see that happening a lot, and I think that's going to be key moving forward. If I may add, so we're talking whether there is a need for legislative action or not. What's going to get our agencies to allocate funding for this region? And I don't know how we do that without directing them to do so. I know that there are models, and I can share some information. There was a task force for the San Joaquin Valley at some point, right, that directed different agencies to say, you're going to invest in this region. So it didn't require them to come up with additional funds, but it was the model, if I understand it correctly, was around looking at the money that's available for the agencies and how they invested collectively in a coordinated way into the region. So I do think how we get there, I'm not sure, but there does need to be some direction, because at the end of the day, investing in the infrastructure is expensive, and with the existing dollar allocations that exist right now, it's a competitive process. So our region, because we faced a lot of disinvestment, a lot of times we're not even ready to be as competitive as we would like. So I would, yes, some direction for the agencies to invest in that area is needed.
I appreciate it, and I know I want to go